We will go ahead and get started. We have some uh, really lucky to have this time together today. Appreciate so many folks signing up for this call. And say welcome on behalf of the Cincinnati Chamber and Hopeful Empowered Youth. Claire and I are really just thrilled that our organizations got together to pull this important conversation together with our esteemed guest, Dr. Jonathan Haidt, author of The Anxious Generation, which has spent the last 51 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. We're very grateful to Kate Schroeder from Interact for Health, who helped pull us together, and to, I think Neil's going to be on the call, but to Neil Mayerson, who made the connection to his friend, John Haidt, to get us together and make sure that this could happen for our community. As you know from the invitation, the focus of this conversation today is how we can elevate student wellness, including policy adjustments regarding student cell phone utilization in Southwest Ohio, Northern Kentucky, in our two states. And so the agenda that we'll have today, we'll get Jonathan introduced here. He'll spend about 40 minutes walking through a presentation with us, and then we'll have 20 minutes for Q&A with him. So be thinking about your questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat, but we'll also call on people to raise your hands at the end. Claire will moderate our Q&A a little bit later. And then from 5 to 5:30, we have 5 folks who are on this call who volunteered to facilitate breakout conversations afterwards so that people can talk about what they hear from Dr. Haidt, what you're working on in your schools already, and to have the chance to actually talk about what you learned. At the core of this event, I think for what we want to achieve today, right, it's about building a resilient community. It's about building a mentally healthy community. We're very focused on that work at the Chamber. It's why we've built leadership programs focused on building mentally healthy work cultures. It's why HAY exists, right, to ensure that we have a backbone organization that ensures a mentally healthy community, particularly with our young people. And everyone on this call knows who Jonathan Haidt is because of the book, The Anxious Generation, published last year. But he's been leading across our country on key topics for quite some time now. Social psychologist at New York University Stern School of Business, received his PhD from the University of Pennsylvania in 1992. His research has examined the intuitive foundations of morality and how moral values vary across culture and political divisions. And so in addition to The Anxious Generation, he's the author of The Happiness Hypothesis, the New York Times bestseller, The Righteous Mind, and The Coddling of the American Mind. Has given TED Talks. And I'll just say for us that I think I followed his work for quite some time. There was an organization that existed in Cincinnati for a long time called Beyond Civility, Communication for Effective Governance, much of which was based on Jonathan's work in The Righteous Mind around polarization and why people are divided by religion and politics. And so thrilled to have him here today. I can't say thank you enough that he agreed to participate in this, and to Neil Mayerson for making the connection, and want to hand it off to him to dive into the topic.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sean. I don't know if Neil is on the call. He and I know Neil back from the early days of positive psychology, or around 2000, 2001. We had some wonderful conversations around this. He supported some work on positive psychology. I haven't seen him in a little while. And so when Neil reached out to me a couple months ago with Sean, I said, well, I'm not able to travel. I'm just totally overwhelmed with stuff for the book. But I said, if you can get at least 20 schools together on a Zoom call, then I'd be very happy to just do a talk, because the whole movement is about collective action. The way we solve this, as you'll see, or as you know, is collective action. As individuals, as individual families, it's very hard to change this, but when we act together, amazing things are happening. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'll show you. So I'll do a slide presentation, because I think you really need to see the graphs. Now, I assume some of you read the book, some have not. Let's see. Hold on a second. How do I share my second? I guess it's just looking. Oh, there it is. Share sound. Okay. So let's see if you now see. No, that's not the way to do it. Stop share, because what do you see? Hold on a second. Let me try this again. What I want is to share screen number 2. Let me see if that one participant at a time can share. Hold on a second. Sorry. Okay, share. Huh. Okay. I don't think why it looks different than it usually does. It doesn't look. Okay, I'll try sharing something. Let's see what happens. You tell me what you see, because I've never seen the screen look this way. Let me try advanced. Usually I'm able to choose which monitor to share. Okay, I'll just try this and see what happens. Can someone tell me what you see? Do you see?
Rolling back the phone-based childhood.
Okay, good. And it takes up the full screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good. All right, good. Then let's go. Okay. So here we are. Okay. So it helps to have, okay, here's a metaphor I want to give you. Look at this tree. Look at the way it sent its roots out. The roots clearly were sort of feeling out the environment, and where there was water and a crack, that's where they grew to. And they grew in this interesting pattern. This is a metaphor for neural growth. This is neurons in kids' heads are growing very rapidly in the first 5 or 6 years. And then after the 6th year or so, they're not growing so much, but the dendrites are really reaching out and connecting based on what the child is doing. Um, so the way tree roots and the way neurons grow are very, very responsive to micro features of what's happening in the brain in this case. And here's another example of a tree growing. It's a tree that grew up behind a Civil War era tombstone. And I guess the bark got scraped by as the tree rubbed against it. And then the tree ended up growing around the tombstone. So that's what trees do. Now, bones are kind of like that too. As you go through puberty, your bones are growing and growing and growing. And some people, half of our teenagers now say that they are online almost constantly. The phone is almost always in their hand. We've all seen it. Kids who they always have the phone in their left hand. And then what they find, what some of them are finding, is that the pinky that holds the phone is bent. It's different from the pinky that doesn't hold the phone. Don't bother checking yourselves. You all went through puberty before smartphones, so you're not going to see anything on your fingers. But we adults are having neck pain and other kinds of pain because we didn't evolve to be crouched over a small screen for so many hours a day. The clearest change, I think, such a good metaphor of what's happening to humanity, is that eyeballs are getting longer. So the focal point is no longer on the retina. So all over the world, because children spend so little time outside, they're spending so much time looking at screens up close, that myopia is rising around the world. If kids got an extra hour or two of outdoor time, sunlight, long views, it would cure the problem. But this is now a global change in the human eyeball. We are growing short-sighted, quite literally. And we're also growing heavier because kids now spend so much time on screens and very little time moving during the day. And so obesity is rising again after a long period where it wasn't really rising. So I think, so this is a photo of a Gen Z brain. This is, okay, it's not an actual photo. I had it made using AI software. But I think that brains are now growing as kids go through puberty. Their brain is growing around their phones in very much the same way that this tree grew around the tombstone. So the story that I tell in the book is a story about the great rewiring of childhood. Let's see if I can move this thing off. All right. The great rewiring of childhood, which refers to it's a tragedy in 2 acts. In Act 1, we lose the play-based childhood. We stop letting kids out for no good reason. We freak out about child abduction. In Act 2, which is very sudden, between 2010 and 2015, everything changes. And that is when the mental illness epidemic begins, 2010 to 2015. I could summarize the whole book with one sentence. We have overprotected our children in the real world. We have underprotected them online. We have to change both. So this is what I'm going to cover today. I've already covered the physical harms. Let's move on to talk about mental illness, because that's what really got me into this. I'm a college professor, and many of us noticed that the students coming in 2014 or so were just really different. Here you see the rates of various disorders up through 2012. In 2012, all the students were millennials. There was no Gen Z. Gen Z begins with birth year 1996 or 1997, Pew says. I say 96, whatever. And then as we go beyond 2012, Gen Z begins to enter, and this is what we get. We get a huge increase in these disorders, and the yellow line is psychological or psychiatric disorders. And in all the graphs I'm going to show you, there's no trend. There's nothing happening before 2010. These are the reasons why college students in America go to their mental health center. This is aggregated, sort of nationally representative of universities around the country, aggregated at UCLA. No trend before 2010, and then this happens. So I'll always mark the period 2010 to 2015. That's the period of massive change. That's the beginning of the phone-based childhood. As you can see, everything's up, but it's really anxiety and depression, which is now so characteristic of being a teen. It's normal. If you are an American teen, it's just normal that you have an anxiety disorder and or depression. A quarter of our students now are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And it's not that everyone is more anxious, it's just the young people. So it really hit Gen Z. It does pick up some of the late millennials. The millennials were born 1981 through 1995. But for Gen X and boomers, which is probably most of the people, many people on the call, there's no real change. It's really just young people who became more anxious during this period. Whenever we look at anxiety and depression, there's always a sex difference. Girls always have higher rates, but the rates really exploded, especially for girls, during the Great Rewiring. Now, so it's especially characteristic of girls. The boys' story is a little different. I'll get to that. But I do want to point out that often we find that as a percentage increase, the boys are often in the same ballpark. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the girls are up, both in absolute and relative terms. But boys are not doing well either. Boys are much more mentally ill than they used to be as well. But notice the elbow is very sharp for the girls. You'll see this on multiple graphs. Very sharp for the girls. For boys, 2012 isn't this crucial year. For boys, it goes up. But it's for the girls, something happened around 2012, 2013 that made the rates skyrocket. So it was a different story here. And you can see the effect of COVID. COVID made things worse, but it was all baked in by 2019. COVID was a blip, and we're just on an upward trend. Now, some people say that this just reflects destigmatization, or maybe that Gen Z is so comfortable talking about it, they're willing to admit it. And that's good. That's a good thing. We should celebrate that. But if that was true, then we wouldn't see the same patterns in behavior, but we do. This graph shows the number out of 100,000 American teens. This is data collected by the CDC. They monitor who goes into a hospital and why. And for the category of intentional self-harm, it used to be very rare for girls and boys 10 to 14 years old to cut themselves, but now it's actually much, much more common. We've seen the rates of self-harm quadruple among the younger teen girls, and it's more than double them of the older teen girls, not on this graph. So it's up for boys too, but the rates are still quite low for boys. For preteen girls did not used to cut themselves, but now it's not that uncommon. And we see the same pattern more or less for suicide. No trend before 2010. We get a big increase. It's down a little bit in the last couple of years. Perhaps the stresses of COVID have relieved, but the trend line clearly is a long-term trend since the early 2010s, with a shocking 67% increase in a single year for the girls, 2012 to 2013. What changed around 2012? And it's when I discovered that it wasn't just us. It's almost all the developed Western countries I can find. Most of the world, we don't have longitudinal studies from most of Latin America or Africa or Asia. But throughout the Western developed world, wherever we have data, other than Eastern Europe is not doing this. Eastern Europe is getting more prosperous in a lot of ways and also more religious. But other than Eastern Europe, everywhere what we've been able to find in the developed world, we're seeing the same trend. So here is similar data for the UK. This is based on medical records. They were able to find that this was the rate of girls self-harm, and then this happens. Once again, super sharp elbow for the girls. And it's up for the boys too, but it's really a super sharp elbow for the girls. So that's the mental illness. We have physical harm, we have mental illness. Now, why? Why is this happening? We have a global mystery. Why is it that since the early 2010s, young people across the developed world are becoming more anxious, depressed, and lonely, more likely to harm and kill themselves, less educated, they'll show you, less able to focus, hence functionally less intelligent? Humanity is getting less intelligent after decades and decades in which we were getting more intelligent. Why did it turn around? Why? People propose all kinds of theories for why it happened in America. You can probably think of some. But why, if it was school shootings, the Newtown Massacre was 2012, our kids had these frightening lockdown drills that were probably counterproductive. So of course they're anxious, people tell me. Fine, maybe that explains some of the increase in America. But why did girls in Australia, New Zealand, Iceland, England, why did they start cutting themselves at the same time? It doesn't make any sense. The only theory that I've ever found that can explain why it happened in the early 2010s in dozens of countries is my theory, the Great Rewiring theory, this tragedy in two acts. So I can show you the first one. Oh, you know what? We kind of do this. I usually do this demonstration live. I want you all to think about the age at which you were let out. What age were you when you could walk out the door, say goodbye to your mother, I'm getting on my bicycle, I'm going to play with my friends, we're going to play outside, we're going to go get pizza, whatever. If you could do that in third grade, then your answer is 8. If you could not do that till 7th grade, your answer is 12. So roughly, when was it? Here, I think we should be able to use the chat. Let me see if I can. I don't see the. I can no longer see. Oh, there it is. I can see the chat. So we're going to answer by generation. Here's the way we're going to do it. If you were born before 1981, you're Gen X or millennial. So only you on the call. Type in your number. What's your number? When were you let out? When did you get freedom? Okay. And as you can see, 6 to 8 is the norm. This is what I find all over the country. This was the norm pretty much everywhere. Some people had different families. Some people grew up in other countries. But those of us like me who grew up in the 70s and 80s, we had a big crime wave. But still, all kids went out to play. It was just normal. Okay, now we probably don't have many Gen Z on this call. But what I'd like to do is, okay, so now stop putting in your numbers. We're going to do a little differently now. How many of you have a child who was born after 1995? Don't type anything yet, but think for your child born after 1995, your Gen Z child, at what age did you let them out? Or if they're young, what age do you expect that you would have left them out before this call or before reading my book? Okay, so go ahead, start typing in your numbers. And yep, 10 to 12. This is what we always find. This is the new norm. It used to be not first grade so much, but by third grade, everyone was out by third grade. And now we don't let kids out till middle school, age 10 to 12, fifth grade maybe. But it's really sixth, seventh grade is when we begin to let kids out. There's been an enormous, enormous change. So going back to the slides, this is what I always find, exactly this. The norm was 6 to 8, and now it's 10 to 12. So that illustrates the loss of the play-based childhood, and it happened in the 90s. I'm not asking about you millennials because you're just it's right in the middle. Like millennials go both ways, depending. But it's really sharp when you look at Gen X versus Gen Z. So here's the second act of the tragedy. The internet came in 2 waves. I didn't realize this till I saw this figure. But you have to really distinguish. The first wave was the personal computer, which I got my first one in 1982 when I was in college. And you couldn't do much on it. You could do word processing, a few video games. But once the internet comes in the early 90s, it's quite amazing. Once you see a web browser, you can get any information in the world instantly. So the late 90s was a time of very rapid increase in these technologies, and it was marvelous. And the kids loved it. And the millennials grew up on this early internet. They learned to program. They learned to put up web pages. They started businesses. They're a creative generation. So we're all techno-optimists by the late 90s, early 2000s. And then the second wave comes in, and we're still techno-optimists. Social media begins in 2003. You get Friendster, MySpace, and Facebook. And it takes off faster than anything ever before. But then the smartphone comes in 2007, and the two combined have a super sharp rise because now you can do Facebook and then later Instagram on your phone all the time. And it's this second wave that creates the phone-based childhood, and it's this second wave that I believe shatters the mental health of kids, especially girls. I can illustrate it like this. If anyone here on the call was born in, let's say 1995, that would make you the last of the millennials. So you turned 15 in 2010. What that means is that you went through early puberty with a flip phone or another sort of basic phone, no front-facing camera, no internet. You just could call people and text them. But if you were born in 2000, just 5 years later, if you were born in 2000, you're turning 15 in 2015. What that means is that your phone was quite possibly a smartphone, an iPhone with a front-facing camera, with Instagram, which is founded in 2010, but Facebook buys Instagram in 2012. 2012 is the year that all the girls go on to Instagram. That's the year, big publicity for Instagram. And that, I think, is why we see the very sharp elbow at 2012. Instagram is incredibly bad for girls' mental health, especially younger teen girls. So that is the great rewiring of childhood. You can see it in images as well. Pictures of childhood from before the 90s were like this. And those of you who grew up in the 80s, you remember, you could be out on a seesaw. You might find an extraterrestrial wandering around. You and your friends put him in your bicycle basket. You have all kinds of adventures with no adults needed. But by 2015, childhood looks very different. Now, if you're a boy, you can't go over to your friend's house. If you do, you can't play together. You have to go to your house where you can have your controller, your headset, your avatar, and then you can play video games with your friends. So our kids are now very isolated. They're not spending much time with each other. They don't have much shared laughter. Think about the millions of times that you laughed with your friends. Now cut that by 70%. They're not even laughing with their friends as much in school because they're all on their phones in school. And so you can see that quite literally here. This is the number of hours per day that Americans spend with their friends outside of work or school. And what you see is that we get this gigantic drop in the youngest age group, 15 to 24. And what you can see is that older generations, they drop in recent years, but not nearly so much. The decline began way before COVID. And take a look at this. You can see the bend in the older generations from 2019 to 2020. You can see the effect of COVID lockdowns because the data was collected in May of 2019 and May of 2020, height of COVID lockdown. But look at the line for the youngest generation. There's no bend. They began social distancing as soon as they got their smartphones. And by 2019, they were almost done. And so 2020 just finished the job. They just keep going down at the same rate. So again, once you get the phone-based childhood, you lose contact with other human beings to a large extent. Oh, sure, you're connecting online, but it's really different. It's not the same. There's no touch, no shared laughter, no eye contact, none of that. And even the time estimate for teenagers with their friends isn't really accurate because a lot of it is they're standing near each other, but each looking at their own phone. Here's the video that a proud father put up about look how fast his son is. Look at his ability to do two things at once. I want you to imagine the neurons in this boy's frontal cortex, the seat of executive function, focus, concentration, reasoning. Imagine those neurons growing with that level of stimulation every day for the next 20 years. That brain is going to grow differently than a brain that doesn't have this kind of stimulation. We've all discovered that if we just give our kids a touch screen, give them your phone, give them an iPad, and they're quiet, and we can do what we want. You can cook dinner, you can do your email, you can do your social media, you can do whatever you want, and everybody's happy. But I believe this is blocking children's development. So now let me move on to what I actually think is the most serious damage. I wrote the book focusing on mental illness. I thought that was the most serious harm, and it's incredibly serious. But I'm now coming to believe that the larger harm, the more lasting harm, which may be permanent if we don't pull our kids back quickly, is the damage to their ability to pay attention, because this is affecting the great majority of kids, and it's even affecting adults to some extent, but especially kids who are going through puberty before puberty. So I assume you all know what fracking is. There's oil below the ground, but most of it is in little bits and in rock, and you can't get to it. You can't pump it out the way they used to. But American petroleum technologists discovered that if you can crack up all the rock and then pump water, and you can pump out all these little bits of oil, and boy, does it add up. It changed America's energy independence. Well, the term attention fracking is a perfect explanation of what's happened. It's only once kids had an iPhone on them that companies and the companies out there could grab every moment of their attention. When most of us were young, companies could only get your attention when you were sitting down watching TV. As soon as you get up, you go to the kitchen, they lose you. When you go to school, they lose you. But now these companies can have every second of your child's free time. And they can take a lot of time that isn't your child's free time. They can take time in class. They can take time at dinner. They can grab any bit of time, almost any time of day. TV couldn't do this. So this only begins once kids have social media on an iPhone in their pocket. The average teen, and at least in this study, gets 237 notifications a day. Some got several thousand a day. If you're on multiple group chats that each generate hundreds of calls, before you know it, you're getting 1,000 notifications a day. And that means you're never going 5 minutes without interruption. They're just constantly fracked. They're interrupted all the time. What's the net effect of this? Well, it sure looks like the phones are making students dumber. Derek Thompson had an article in The Atlantic a year and a half ago. And he pointed out that when you look at the reading scores and math scores, and you all know about the NAEP, the Nation's Report Card National Assessment of Educational Progress, we made slow but steady progress in this country since the 1970s. We have a lot of demographic headwinds, decline of families, all sorts of things. But even still, our schools were able to raise the average level of reading and math over 5 decades until 2012. It turns around. Now, People freaked out in 2023 when they saw this data and they said, my God, look what COVID did. COVID restrictions. Oh my goodness. And people thought it would bounce back because they thought this was a devastating effect of COVID. But now that we're past COVID, kids will come back. Well, that didn't happen. Here is the 2024 results. And here I have it broken up by quartile. So the top quarter, by scores on these various exams, the top quarter is in light blue. And as you can see, there is still no post-COVID recovery. It continues to go down, or at least level. But here's what I really want to show you. In every study I've seen, this includes the TIMS, the math science test. In every study, whenever you graph it either by quartile like this or by social class of the family, the damage is concentrated on the bottom. The top students are a little worse than they used to be. The bottom students are way worse. So all the progress we made, any progress we made towards educational equity, destroyed, gone. Educational disparities are now so much bigger than they were in 2012. And it's not because of COVID. And it's not just us. This is happening around the world. Here's the PISA test, 37 countries around the world, and all the scores are down. Not because of COVID, but you can see it does drop rapidly during COVID, but the decline began after 2012. And so many of us as college professors are noticing that our students complain about being assigned books. It's very hard for students today to read a book. Imagine that. Imagine if college students could no longer read books. I mean, that would be a complete disaster for humanity, and certainly for the country and for our ability to educate the next generation. No one can read a novel. No one can read a nonfiction book. So I was talking about this with my students. I teach a flourishing class at NYU. And one of my students said, I open a book, I read a sentence, I get bored, I go to TikTok. That's attention fracking. A lot of our students are addicted to TikTok. Now, the ones who made it into NYU, it's not such a high rate. It's only a few in each class are spending 5 hours a day on TikTok. But of the kids who don't go to college, a lot more of them, at least a third of all American kids are on social media all day long. They say they're on it constantly. It's mostly TikTok, also Instagram Reels, short videos primarily. And so technology is destroying our kids' ability to pay attention, which has disastrous consequences for education. But never fear, technology is the answer. Here's an academic paper that I wrote with Jean Twenge. Suppose I were to assign this to my students in my flourishing class. What would they do? Well, those whose attention has been destroyed can't read it. They're not able to read an academic article. But one of them told me, no problem. You go to PDF to brain rot. So you find this online. I think it's pdftobrainrot.com. And what you do is you take this PDF file that your professor assigned, you drop it in here, then you select which video game you want to play in the background, and voila, you get
It Loader Trails in Adolescent Loneliness. Steve Bidakuyan. The world is feeling the goon vibes of loneliness hitting teens. From 2012 to 2018, almost every country saw a spike in school loneliness, especially among girls. It is like a Sigma grinds had gone wrong, with social media and smartphones turning friendships into toilet bowl reflections of despair.
Okay, you get the idea. Our kids are being dumbed down. We're educators. This is a complete disaster. There was recently a really powerful article in the Financial Times, and John Byrne Murdoch collected a bunch of studies together to show that across multiple measures, it's not just kids, it's also adults, but especially teens are not able to pay attention anymore. And so this is a question on the Monitoring the Future study. How many days of the past 30 would you say that you've had difficulty thinking or concentrating, or had trouble learning new things? What you see is there's a small trend on the left and there's no trend on the right until 2010, and then this happens. So it's beginning around 2014 or so. American high school students are increasingly saying they can't concentrate, they can't learn new things, they can't read a book. It was very sudden, and it's just like the mental illness graphs. I want to point out, I work in a business school, and every time I talk to people in the corporate world, I always ask them, so how are your young employees? How's it going bringing Gen Z? And they hate it. The corporate world really dislikes employing young people. They're very hard to employ. This was an article from Davos 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, that no matter what the topic was, people bring up how difficult it is to bring young people into their company. They're just not able, not ready to work. Employers revealed by Gen Z is the hardest generation to work with. And so the point, I just put these two slides up because I want to make the point. This isn't just about their mental health and their scores in school. This is a workforce development issue. If you want your region to flourish, If you want southern Ohio, northern Kentucky to flourish, you need educated young people, and we don't have educated young people. We have a generation whose ability to attend has been damaged. We've got to stop. We've got to reverse. We've got to get rid of these technologies that have shattered their attention. Briefly, the girls versus boys stories, they're very different. I thought when I started the book that it would be about social media harming girls, because that's where the evidence is best. That's the best studied area. And I won't even go through them. There's so many ways that social media harms girls, but you could just read this for yourself. For a variety of reasons, girls were sucked into Instagram and Pinterest is not bad. Pinterest turns out to not be harmful, but Tumblr, they get into these groups where they influence each other, and the more you are mentally ill, the more support you get. So there's pressure to look more mentally ill, and then girls pick up each other's emotions more. So for all these reasons, social media devastated girls beginning 2012, 2013. It doesn't have as much effect on boys. The boys' story is more complicated, or rather, it was not as clear. But we figured it out, I believe. My research partner, Zach Rausch. And we drew in part on a wonderful book by Richard Reed. It's called Of Boys and Men. And Richard's a policy analyst. He was at Brookings. And he talks about how boys have been dropping out of the real world since the 70s. It used to be a man's world. But as you get women's liberation, you get women free to pursue college education, careers. Girls and women have been going up and up and up since the 70s. It used to be 60% of college students were male in 1970. And by the 90s, early 2000s, it's nearly 60% of college students are female. Richard says that at every level from kindergarten through PhD, girls are crushing boys. Girls are most of the graduates, most of the A students at every level. Boys are dropping out and retreating. School becomes more and more hostile to boys. We cut recess, we cut shop class, we cut auto mechanics. We think we need to compete with China on math and science. So we're doing all we can to make school as boring as it possibly can be, especially for boys. And they say, you know what? I have a lot more fun on video games. I have a lot more fun on pornography. And the porn and the video games get better and better and better as transmission speeds go up and up and up. So the boys find a lot of gratification with video games and porn. But when they focus on that, they don't do anything that will turn them into men. They don't do anything that will teach them skills that they'll need to actually have a girlfriend or a job. Just a couple days ago, there's an article in The Atlantic on the effects of porn. Porn's always been around for hundreds of years, but when it is super high quality, high speed internet, professionally filmed, chosen by algorithm to be maximally erotic to you, the user it gets to know. And so what Caitlin Flanagan says is that the heterosexual man can now have what many see as a rich sex life without ever needing to deal with an actual woman. And this is before AI. As you know, young men are creating AI girlfriends that are much more responsive to them and much more pleasing than real girls would be. Young women are creating AI boyfriends who listen to them and are much more romantic than a real boy would be. So unless we stop this soon, there's not going to be much coupling, marriage, or childbearing going into the future. The way to understand the boys' situation, I believe, is this. I asked AI to draw me an image of a boy sitting on the ocean floor, a shallow ocean with a bunch of fish hooks near him. What the smartphone and the video game console have allowed companies to do is to make literally hundreds of billions of dollars a year by distorting boys' dopamine circuits, by grabbing boys' attention in ways that gamify things so that when they're on the app, on the screen, it's super exciting. Then their dopamine systems adjust. They dial down to get back to homeostasis. And that's why when you take your son off of video games, if he's playing for a while and you take him off, you have to come into dinner, he's surly, irritated, anxious, because his brain is not getting the stimulation that it needs to be normal. So it starts with the video games, moves on to porn. As they get a little older, they start vaping. I can't believe we almost vanquished teen smoking, and now it's all back with vaping. There's marijuana pens, marijuana's legalized, it's everywhere. Sports betting when they get a little older. Investing has been gamified. Crypto investing is a trick to super activate boys' dopamine circuits and give them a reward for doing stuff that is financially destructive. The more kids invest in these gamified things, and especially the more they do sports betting, the more they're going to go broke and go bankrupt, because the house always wins. And if you play a lot, you're going to lose all your money. And so we're destroying boys. We're just destroying boys right and left. You don't see it at the elite levels, but when you look at especially lower SES, the gap between girls and boys is a chasm, as Richard Reeves points out. It's the boys in the bottom quarter of social class and academic ability that are being just crushed. So that's the darkest point of the talk. Now I'm going to turn it around and say that no matter how dark this is, the amazing thing is that we can actually fix this for approximately $0. It doesn't cost anything to fix this. But the trick is we have to do it together. You can't fix it on your own as one family, one parent, even one school. We need 4 new norms, and if we have those, we can roll back the phone-based childhood. Here they are. I'll run through them one at a time. So the first norm is no smartphone before high school. It's insane to give your 9, 10, 11-year-old a smartphone as their first phone. If you need to text them, call them. If they need to arrange pickup at school, give them a flip phone. Give them a phone watch. Give them something with no internet and no apps. And also, I didn't know this when I wrote the book, but now I do know. Don't give them an iPad either. I'll show you why in a moment. An iPad is almost as bad as a smartphone. The one saving grace is it's not as portable. So the iPad doesn't go with them to school. They're not using it on the school bus. But the iPad is functionally otherwise the same as the iPhone. The laptop is more complicated. You're going to need to give your kids a computer at some point because our schools have now mandated that our kids do everything on screens, which is a terrible thing we're going to have to talk about. But that's a little more complicated. Norm number 2, no social media before 16. The guys who built social media did it after studying. Some of them took a course at Stanford called Persuasive Design. They learned about dopamine. They learned about motivation. They learned about behaviorism, about stimulus response, reinforcement, variable ratio, reinforcement schedules. And they designed this to hook kids. They know what they were doing and they did it. So what I'm saying is, okay, ideally it would be 18. Really, minors, this should be like smoking or drinking or drugs. But all right, we're not going to get a norm of 18. But I think we can get a norm of 16 and a law of 16. Because my point is that evidence for harm is greatest in early puberty. Let's protect the first half of puberty. Now, it's true that if you don't let your kid on, my daughter is 15. She says she's the only one in her whole high school that doesn't have Snapchat. And yes, she misses out on things. That's true. But you know what? Once you let them on Snapchat, they're going to miss out on almost everything else because they're going to be on Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram almost all the time. Half of them are on almost all the time. The third norm is phone-free schools, which I'll come back to in a moment because that's one of the main things I want to talk with you about. And the key thing is do not accept a ban on instruction time. I hear that Kentucky just passed a bill. Yay! No, actually, no, because it's just instruction time. And we'll come back to that, why that doesn't work. That doesn't really matter. And the fourth norm is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. Here are some ideas for parents. Lenore Skenazy and I co-founded Let Grow, and here are just a few ideas from Lenore that are in the book. She helped me write some of the chapters at the end. The point is, it would be great if you could send your kids out to play like we did when we were young. But even if you feel you can't do that, there's a lot of ways you can still give your kids a break from phones and time for play. Go to letgrow.org for many more ideas. Now, I want to show you this, especially in your role as parents, but it has relevance for schools too. So I'm not saying don't ever show your kids screens. That would be very, very difficult to do. And it's not necessary because keep in mind, humans are storytelling animals. That's how we evolved. We've always socialized our kids with stories. A story is culture and morality packed into an emotionally engaging tale that you attend to for an hour or two. Some of these epic poems, epic stories go on for 10, 20 hours. So stories are good. And what that means is that this is perfectly good. If you have a child and you want to let your child watch a movie, movies are almost always about people moving through a moral world, facing obstacles, facing dilemmas. Something's bad, something's good. They're learning. This is how humans have always passed on culture and morality. So don't be afraid of letting your kids watch a movie on a TV screen. That's actually a good thing. And similarly, in school, occasionally, I can't believe how often my kids say, "What did you do today?" "Oh, we watched a Disney movie." "But you're in 5th grade. Why did you?" But at least it's not doing harm. It's a waste of time, but it's not doing harm. In any case, that's perfectly good. You know what's bad? iPad time. iPad time, or here, kid, here's my iPhone, shut up. That's bad because that's using a touchscreen, which is much more addictive. You get the stimulus response, dopamine hit, stimulus response, dopamine hit. You don't get that from TV. So using a touchscreen alone watching, and it always ends up being short videos. That's what it all gravitates to, is TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. And you're jumping around. And what we're teaching kids, what kids learn, what their neurons get really good at doing is judging. I've been watching this video for 10 seconds and it's kind of interesting, but I bet there's something more interesting. Swipe on to the next one. So kids are very good at judging. Is this the most interesting thing, or could there be something more? There's always something more. Now imagine this kid sitting in your class and you're trying to teach them. There's always something more interesting than the teacher. Pull out the phone, hide it in your book. You're on TikTok. You can breathe. So it's fragmenting time that you got to keep your kids from. So more specific advice for educators. So phone-free schools, this is the most important thing you can do. There's no point doing anything else until you do this. There's no point doing anything to raise grades until you do this, because this is a huge obstacle to kids paying attention. And I want to explain to you why you cannot have an instruction time only ban. It doesn't do anything. Okay, some schools say it helps, but you don't get the magical effects until you go phone-free, away for the day, bell to bell. So a survey last year of NEA members, teachers around the country, found that they strongly support prohibiting personal device use during the entire school day. And here's what they said. So the survey asked, how disruptive is student use of cell phones and personal devices during class time, during instructional time? What you see is that the worst possible policy for school is we let each teacher make their own policy. We don't tell them how to teach. That's the worst thing you can do, because now the teacher has to be the heavy, and most of them give up and they say, oh my God, 79% say we have a big problem. It's really disruptive. But note that schools that allow their kids to use the phones between classes, they're just as bad. Note that if you ban phones during class, but you let the kids have phones between classes, the phones are really disruptive during class because it's in the kid's pocket and they're going to watch it. And have you noticed that your students go to the bathroom a lot more now? They can't sit. They go out. They have to check. So you have to separate the kid from the phone for the day, or you don't get the benefits. Look what happens when you separate the kid for the day. When you have to store the phone away in a yonder pouch or just an envelope at the front of the room by the teacher's desk or a phone locker, you get amazing transformative results. Because if you just ban it during instruction time, they're all racing for their phone. Even if you take the phones away, put them in one of those shoe caddies at the front of the room, they're thinking about the drama that was going on between classes, and they're anxious about what people are saying about them during class. They rush for their phone. The hallways are silent. The lunchroom is quiet. That's what America's turned into. Schools are a zombie apocalypse of kids looking down at phones. Every school that goes truly phone-free, they always say the same thing. We hear laughter in the hallways again. We haven't heard loud laughter. We haven't heard loud lunchrooms since 99, or no, actually more like since 2010. So you have to go phone-free. Kentucky, if you're from Kentucky, please call your legislators. Actually, I think I even have something. I don't have to about Kentucky. But the point is, what Kentucky has just passed is worthless. You've got to push them to make it away for the day, phone-free. And also, it has to, let me see if I have some notes. Shoot, I had notes. Hold on a second. Let me just see them. Where is it? Here it is. Okay. No. So Ohio, you have a bill moving through your legislature. Chris Vineis is the key legislator who's pushing to make it better. Vineis, Vineis, if you know him, or any of your legislators in Ohio. And I'm told we need representative people in Representative Jean Schmidt's district. If anyone has Jean Schmidt as their rep, please reach out to her and share that you want a phone-free policy. That is bell to bell, away for the day, distraction-free school. Because otherwise you're going to get stuck with a instruction time only ban, and that's worthless. Also, it has to, there's one more thing I'm told. It has to, do not allow the education exemption. Like, they're banned unless there's an educational need for them. Don't do that, because then they're going to have they'll still have the phones on them. And it has to include everything that can send text or receive text. It has to include phone watches if they can text, which most of them can now. So, but bell to bell, you get amazing, amazing results. You get your students back. Red states and blue states are all doing this. Countries around the world are all doing this. I hope that Ohio and Kentucky will do this. It has to be bell to bell. Don't settle for anything less. And it has to include the AirPods, If anyone brings an iPad, everything that can send texts has to go in. You want the students paying attention to the teachers and to each other. Now, what about the one-to-one devices? How many of you have one-to-one devices? You worked very hard. You spent a lot of money to get an iPad or a Chromebook on every kid's desk. You thought this was an equity issue, didn't you? We were told it was an equity issue. The rich kids have devices. We've got to buy computers and iPads for the poor kids. Everyone has to have one. Well, guess what? The opposite is true. The rich kids actually have controls on their use at home. The poor kids don't. It's been found, UNESCO has had some really powerful reports on this. Academic performance is going down around the world, and the decline is mostly linked to increased distraction and time spent on non-academic activities. If you have a multifunction device on kids' desks, they're going to find a way to watch short videos. And you have physical harm as well. Sweden was one of the first countries to get rid of paper and pencil, to put everything on devices. They thought this was so modern. They were also the first country to realize what a terrible mistake they had made. The Minister of Education last year began pulling it all out. There's clear scientific evidence that digital tools impair rather than enhance student learning. There may be some ed tech that's useful. I think Khan Academy is good. I think having a board, a screen to present YouTube videos, they're useless for that. But the one-to-one devices, putting a distraction machine on a kid's desk, is bad for education. I don't care what the consultants tell you. In theory, it might be good, but in practice, it's just distraction. That swamps everything else. Get rid of them. Norm number 4, far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. Go to letgrow.org, our most powerful tool. This is amazing. This is a transformative tool. It costs $0. You download the toolkit, and all it is the kids are told, you give them a piece of paper to take home. Pick something you can do on your own that you've never done before. Do it with your parents' permission, but without your parents. And we suggest maybe you've never walked the dog before and you think you can do that. Maybe you've never walked to a store and there's a store 5 blocks away you think you can walk to and buy something for the family. Maybe it's make breakfast. Maybe it's make breakfast for the family, or go deliver something to your grandmother. Whatever you pick, whatever the kid picks, they do it. They're often nervous. You're often nervous, but they do it. And then they are jumping up and down. They are so excited. It's so beautiful to watch this. This was my daughter, Francesca, when she was 6. We arranged, because we were friends with Lenore Skenazy, who wrote Free Range Kids, we arranged for Francesca to bring me my lunch at my office, which is 2 blocks away from our apartment. She had to cross a big street. And here she is coming up the stairs to my office. Now, I spied on her. I wanted to make sure she made it across the street. So I was like looking around the corner. And then I ran back to my lobby. But here she is coming up the stairs of the Stern Business School. And she's just so excited. And we did a few things like this. She gained so much confidence. She can walk around our neighborhood by the age of 7. She would go shopping for bagels, and we'd send her to the store. And it was really transformative for this little girl to be trusted, to be given responsibility. My final suggestion for you on the play side is kids desperately need more recess. Federal prisoners in federal penitentiaries are guaranteed 2 hours of yard time a day. Most American kids are given 25 minutes of recess, and sometimes that includes lunch. It's terrible. We've got to give them back more recess with less supervision. Recess is not frivolous time. Recess is crucial for brain development, for emotional regulation, for social skills. Please cut back on math and science or anything else you can. Whatever it takes, cut back on it. You've got to give kids more time to play. Play is a biological necessity. So the good news is you won't be alone. This is happening all around the world. Please go to anxiousgeneration.com. We're kind of a hub for all the different projects going on around the world. We believe that in just 3 years, by the end of 2027, we believe that we can roll back the phone-based childhood. We can free the anxious generation. It's not that no kids will be glued to iPads, but the trend is going to be really different. There's going to be a public consensus around the world that we've got to see these things kind of like tobacco or alcohol. They're addictive substances that harm our kids, that are very attractive to our kids. They're attractive nuisances. And so within 3 years, the world is going to be changing. And I know this because we're on this mission and it's happening all over the world. Groups of parents are springing up, driven by mothers. There's really a mother's rebellion going on around the world. These are just some of the groups that sprung up in the last year or two. Legislation is advancing in states all over the country for social media regulation, for phone-free schools, and for childhood independence. If you go to anxiousgeneration.com, you'll find this map. You can see what state policies will help you craft the right state policies. This was for Connecticut. I should have updated for Ohio. So in conclusion, In conclusion, my argument today has been that our kids' brains are growing around their phones in a way very much like the way this tree grew around this tombstone. We've got to reverse it. And if we do this together, enact the 4 norms, we can reclaim childhood in the real world. So here's the to-do list that I'm offering to you. Phone-free schools. Get rid of all the one-to-one devices, especially in elementary school. Start on elementary school. Give more recess with less supervision. Do the Let Grow project. It doesn't just change the kids and the parents. It changes the community because people see a bunch of 8-year-olds walk into the store. Nobody's seen that since 1992. And you can reach beyond the school walls to suggest that parents delay smartphones. Most parents will be grateful to you if you send out that message. You back them up, because most parents don't want to give their kid, or a lot of parents, I should say, I don't know if it's most. So let's talk about how I can help you roll back the screen-based school day, or whatever else you want to talk about. And stop sharing my screen. Okay, let's talk.
Jonathan, thank you so much. These are incredible, incredible thoughts and food for thought. I have a couple questions that have come into me, but just as we're opening it up, if you have a question, go ahead and put your hand up or drop it in the chat. One of the first questions that came in, Jonathan, is around Yonder pouches, because you mentioned that. I'm going to drop it in the chat. Have you seen schools successfully balance using these and balance parent demands for ongoing and the creativity of youth in dropping a burner phone in the pouch anyway?
Yeah. So Yonder pouches are easy to defeat. My daughter, they used it in my daughter's middle school. And there's a video you can find on YouTube. It shows you 5 ways to open them. And so if a school doesn't enforce it really well, then they don't work. But here's the amazing thing. If the school puts in a little bit of effort so that you do phone, because the way, any way you open the pouch, it kind of damages it. You can see if you do an inspection. And so if the school does occasional inspections and they try to enforce the policy, schools are getting amazing results from Yonder. So I had my doubts about it originally because my daughter's experience was that most of the kids in her school were just taking their phones out. But I've heard from so many schools that use Yonder pouches that it actually really works. But as long as you enforce it, the norms change pretty quickly. And sure, they could drop a burner phone in, but you have a very severe penalty. Any kid who's seen anywhere on a phone during the day, now you know that they're in violation. If you see the phone, they're in violation. You take it and you say your parents have to come pick it up. I'm not giving it back to you till they come to pick it up. Boy, do they get the message quickly, and the norms change. I should also say you're not going to get as much objection as you think. Everyone says they expected a wave of objection from the parents and kids. Instead, what happens is you get some objection from parents, you get some objection from kids. But by 3 weeks in, the kids actually say, oh, this is actually really good. We enjoy playing cards and soccer at lunch rather than all being on our phones.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. I see we have a question from Rob. Rob?
Hey, thank you, Professor Haidt. Really appreciate your work. And I think I speak for a lot of educators when I say we're grateful for the movement you've kicked off. It certainly informed us at Country Day. And for those with questions, we're away for the day. And it's a huge success, and I strongly recommend it to everybody. It'll be the easiest, cheapest intervention you make in the student experience. And it's been so successful that it's allowed us to reevaluate our approach to laptops and ed tech and the rest of it. My question is really for those of us who are maybe on that edge of following your research, what's next? What advice would you have for us who are away for the day, who are reevaluating one-to-one? And in particular, John Byrne Murdoch's article startled me this week, and the challenges that our kids are now seeing with persisting through effortful thinking or practicing higher level cognition. What advice do you have for schools as it relates to sort of the cognitive crisis, not just the mental health angle?
Yeah. So first, I urge everyone on this call, please go to afterbabble.com. That's my Substack. It's free. You don't have to give me any money. There's no paywall. And we started focusing, the first year was really all about mental health. But just in the last 3 months, we've had a number of essays there from experts on ed tech. I didn't say much about ed tech in the books I didn't know, and I didn't have time to work. I was in such pressure to write. But we've learned a lot about ed tech since then. So if you go to afterbabble.com, and what you'll see is along the top, we have some tabs for clusters of articles. And one of them is what schools and educators can do now. And you will find we have our most recent one was about phone watches. Phone watches are really, really bad if they can send and receive text. You've got to treat them like phones. So we have an article on phone watches. We have an incredible talk from Sophie Winkleman in Britain on what EdTech was doing to kids. So I would say have a group meeting, whether it be of the teachers in the school or whether it's with the parents. Show Sophie's talk or show my talk. I think this talk is being recorded. Is that right? um, if so, please, share the video, put it up on YouTube for all I care. Send it around. Let all the parents in your schools watch my talk, see those slides. So we have a lot of information for you there. And then the other thing, the big area that people aren't acting on as much is the play side, the fourth norm. So, because the goal isn't just to separate kids from the screens. The goal is to make life and school engaging and fun. And so if it's just a grind all day long, you don't even get to talk to your friends because everyone's on their phone. That sucks. Kids don't like school. The suicide rate goes up sharply once school is in, and it goes down once school is out. We have ruined school. Many of us remember school being fun. We played with our friends. That's not happening much anymore. So you got to restore play. Don't just focus on the screens. You've got to restore play. And here's a nice example. This morning, I spoke to all of the superintendents of schools in Connecticut. I went up to Bristol, Connecticut. That's why the thing said Connecticut, because I used the same PowerPoint slide. So all the superintendents and the Commissioner of Education was there, and the Governor of Connecticut, Ned Lamont, was there. So you got the whole leadership of the entire state of Connecticut. And it was amazing the things that they're doing there. One of the superintendents told me that what they've done is they've gotten, in the whole town, they've gotten about a dozen local merchants to take part. And so, and it's called I think it's called the Let Grow Challenge or something like that. So if you do 5, they have a little checklist. If you do 5 things, one of them is, you've gone to a park to play with your friends, without supervision. There's like, I don't know, something like 5 things. If you do that, then you can take it to any of these local merchants and you get a free ice cream or whatever it is that they sell, whatever they do. And so what I'm saying is schools and superintendents, you can change the culture of the town. And it's going to be a lot easier to get kids off their screens and off their videos if there are fun things to do. But right now, there's nothing for kids to do. My daughter wanted to go shopping at Target with her friends in Brooklyn, but kids aren't allowed. You have to be 18 to enter Target. Now that's because of shoplifting. But my point is, there's really nothing for the kids to do. If an 8-year-old goes outside and there are no other 8-year-olds, someone's going to call the police on them. But if you get local merchants, you do a town-wide, district-wide thing. You say, we are going to restore the play-based childhood. We're going to get our kids off screens and give them back fun experience in the real world. So we're going to have a big meeting. We're going to bring the chief of police of the town, bring him in, her in, because if the police say, yes, we approve of it, don't worry. If someone calls cops because you let your kid out, we're just going to say, no, that's the parent's decision. They're allowed to decide that. At Let Grow, we have a kid license. It's something I created. It says, if someone stops you on the street, which happens to kids when they're out without an adult, you give it to them. It says, I am not lost. My parents know where I am. If you still think that if you still have a problem with this, please, first, read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Second, remember when you were my age, were you allowed out to do things like this? Third, call my parents because I have their permission. And then you sign it and your parents put their phone number. So anyway, that's my advice to you. Get rid of the one-to-one devices and then really work on the play within the school walls and in the whole community.
Jonathan, that's a great segue. We have a question about the kind of research, that might deal with the need for play with high school students. You said more recess, wondering about the need. And is it as strong for 14 to 18-year-olds?
Yeah. It's not as strong. Kids are just incredibly playful when they're young and all the way through middle school. Please, if you have middle schools, please give them some recess. I just heard from one of the superintendents that's something to do. They had 0 recess in middle school, but because of my book, they put in a short recess for all the middle school kids, and the kids love it, especially the boys. Here is a tip that's so easy. Open the playground half an hour before school starts and let the kids come to play. It solves the truancy problem, especially for boys. The boys run around. First period starts. They sit down. They're ready to learn. They've been running around. So there's a lot more you can do for middle school. Now, high school is harder. High school kids are still playful. My college students are still playful, but it's different. It's not as much. It's not like run around and throw a ball as much. So they still like that. It becomes a lot more social, teasing, practical jokes on each other. They're laughing. They're making memes. So and it is trickier, I understand, because if you give just big open spaces to your high school kids during the day, some bad stuff is going to happen. Kids are going to have cigarettes or, but first of all, be sure you can only do this if you're screen free. There's no point in giving more time if you're not screen free, because they're just going to spend it doing bad stuff online and talking to strangers. As long as you're screen free, give them more time and have a room where there's, cards and games and checkers and chess and a pool table. The kids still love to play games. And so have more of that, and the school day will be more fun, and their social skill will improve, because they don't learn social skills from the SEL class. You don't learn from being told by an adult. You learn it from actually doing it and getting the feedback from peers. So I do understand that there are risks, and in some communities there's going to be more trouble, others maybe less. But we give it a try, and kids today are much less mischievous than they used to be. The mischief now is in order to get a video. So you do get all kinds of horrible things happening in schools, like they'll lure a kid into the bathroom and beat the hell out of him. Why? To get a video to put up on social media. So if you ban the phones, you get less of that. The kids are much less rowdy than they used to be. So give them a chance, I would say, in high school too. Thank you.
Jonathan, you mentioned eliminating one-to-one devices. Does this apply equally to grade schools and high schools? And what's some data about the pros and cons of one-to-one?
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. So let me just level set here. For many years, I had a policy in my university classes, which is I like to take notes on a laptop. There are course materials. There's lots of reasons why you might want a laptop, but we can't multitask. So if you want permission to use your laptop, you have to stand up, and I put a pledge on the screen. Everyone raise your right hand. I solemnly swear I will only use my computer for class-related purposes. That's what I did for several years. But the TA would sit in the back of the room, and she'd say half the class is texting, online shopping, email. None of us can help it. I mean, look, how many people on this call are multitasking right now? Probably half the people with their screens off are multitasking, and a quarter of the people with their screens on are multitasking, because on Zoom, nobody knows what you're doing. So to be clear, my college students and my MBA students cannot handle a one-to-one device. They're 27 years old. They cannot learn if there's a one-to-one device. So a lot of us are now banning all screens in class. University students cannot pay full attention if they have a laptop. How the hell is a 7-year-old going to do it? So just get rid of them. There was never any evidence that they helped. What evidence there was created by the companies or funded by the companies. You'll see on our Substack, we have reviews of it. There's really nothing out there to suggest that this is going to help. It was pushed by the companies that are making billions and billions of dollars, soaking up billions and billions of dollars of tax money. Your school budget will be so much more effective if you use it to support teachers teaching or get more teachers. Don't spend money on iPads and Chromebooks. Now, note, the people who made this technology, what do? They send their kids to the Waldorf school precisely because it doesn't allow computers, laptops, anything. Now, there's a computer room. Fine. I'm totally happy to have 8-year-olds learning how to program. Learning a programming language, making something, great. Go to the computer room, take a programming class. But in the classroom, if there's a screen on your desk, you're not going to be able to learn. College students can't do it. A 7-year-old certainly can't. So just get rid of them. I know it's hard, and it's really hard, because I'm imagining both of your states have mandated that all the exams be done on a computer, right? Or an iPad. So this is not something you can do at the phones. The phones, you can ban them tomorrow. I understand you can't get rid of the one-to-one devices. But even if they have to take their tests on this, keep them in a cart, wheel it out when they need to do the test, give them a little practice, and lobby your legislators to stop that. The more you push, and you'll see there's clear data. The more kids use computers, the less they learn.
Jonathan, thank you. Do you have time for one more question?
Oh, yes, please. Oh, yeah, we're fine. But yeah, I'll do one more question, and then you guys are doing breakout sessions. Go ahead.
Yeah, wonderful. So Tracy asked a great question that relates to some of your reflection there, which is we see parents at functions as addicted to their phones as their kids. Yeah. How can we tactfully make them see the generational problem here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, when parents are multitasking, they're probably it's often work related. We're all overwhelmed at work. It's not, but for some, they're on Instagram. But here's the key thing I want to point out to you. I often hear parents assume that, well, if I'm on my device, my kids are going to copy me. Really? If I start reading The Economist magazine, do I think for a moment my daughter's going to read The Economist magazine? She doesn't care what I do. She cares entirely about what the other girls do in her class. So It is a problem that we're all on our devices, especially with young children. If you have toddlers and you're on your device, you're doing continuous partial attention, you are building your child's internal working model that mom or dad is not really responsive to me. They're always partial. For little kids, it is really important what the parents are doing. For middle school, high school kids, by all means, set a good example, but it's far more important that you just delay smartphones till high school, delay social media till 16. Those are huge. Whereas you getting off your device, marginal benefit, I would say. Okay, we're over time. So I'm going to bow out. I'm going to leave you to discussion. I'm thrilled that you're doing this. I'm thrilled that you all got together. I hope you will work together. I hope you'll stay in touch with each other. I hope you'll, especially the superintendents, I hope you will try to do things in the whole town. You all have to act beyond the school walls because the parents individually are having trouble. But if you send out signals, if you organize things, if you send out clear messages, if you ask them to delay to help us solve the problem in school, it would help if you delay giving your kid a smartphone till high school, et cetera, et cetera. You can change your towns, you can change Ohio, you can change Kentucky, and together we're changing the world. So go to it. Thanks and good luck.
Jonathan, thank you. Thank you. On
Thank you.
Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber, and hey, Hopeful Empowered Youth, we appreciate you. Southwest Ohio and Northern Kentucky appreciates you. We will send the recording out to everybody. Thanks for the comments in chat. I want to note there's a couple things in the chat to call your attention to. Christine's note about collective advocacy. Please take a look at that. Follow up with her directly. Hey is all about collective action. If you're interested in engaging in a 10-year vision to address youth mental health and wellness, please reach out. info@hopefulempoweredyouth.org. We have 5 amazing community leaders on the call who have volunteered to host some breakout sessions with us all. One, asking ourselves, so what? Like, what does this mean to us as individuals in our spheres of influence? And so what for our regions? We have across the region today over 300 folks engaged in this call, and that's because people have come together and said we can do something different for our youth and through our schools. So huge thanks to those partners who helped us get to today. I'm just going to drop them in the chat as a quick thanks and shout out to all of those partners in the region, and also our breakout partners that Emily's going to break us out to in just a minute. So here's the questions we're going to chat through. Take a look at them so you can take a peek and get yourself ready. And please, let's be in touch on next steps. We have a School of Wellness initiative with Hey. You can go to our website and check it out at hopefulempoweredyouth.org and apply. But for now, we're going to break out with Paul, Nancy, Nicole, Eli, Kristen, and Kendra and have some conversation about what's next for our region. And thank you all. You could be in a million places and you chose to be here talking about youth wellness, and we appreciate you. Emily, back to you.